the 8th Annual Virtual Age of Champions Health and Wellness Fair. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Rabelais, and I'm co-director for the Center on Aging and Community Living at the University of New Hampshire. I want to walk us through a few logistical items before we get started with our program today. First, we ask that all participants keep themselves muted during the presentation. You can mute and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon in your Zoom window. We're going to be using the chat feature this morning, and that's located at the bottom of your screen. I encourage folks to chat your comments and your questions throughout the presentation today. Also, I want to note that this session is being closed captions, and I'm going to take a moment just to walk through how closed captioning works. So as you see here on this slide, when captions are available, you'll see a notification that appears in the controls at the bottom of the screen. Next slide, please. To enable closed captioning, click on the closed captioning icon, select Show Subtitle, and the captions will appear on the bottom of your screen. If you select View Full Transcript, a running transcript of the captions will appear. You can also adjust the size of the captions by selecting Subtitle Settings. Finally, I want to note that this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Age of Champions 2021 event website. So we've been finding that these sessions have been packed with great information. And so you will be able to return to the event website to review the sessions that you've attended, as well as check out any that you've missed during the week. Next slide, please. I want to take a moment to read our event disclaimer. The event may provide information related to exercise, fitness, diet, and nutrition, as well as other content that's intended for your personal use and information purposes only. You should consult with a physician before beginning any exercise, fitness, diet, or nutrition routine, especially if you're pregnant or have pre-existing health conditions. Nothing contained in the website should be considered as medical advice or diagnoses. Your use of the website is solely at your own risk. Next slide, please. If you should encounter any challenges, either in this session, throughout the day, or through the remainder of the Age of Champions event, please feel free to contact Bridget Drake, and you can see her email on the slide, bridget.drake@unh.edu. And I believe someone's also going to be posting that email in the chat feature as well. Bridget has been a wonderful support throughout, and she's more than happy to help anyone who's having technical difficulties. So please do feel free to reach out to her. Next slide, please. I want to give a shout out to this year's sponsors, many of whom have sponsored in past years. This year's sponsors include American House, Alzheimer's Association, Maine and New Hampshire chapter, Bellamy and Watson Fields, New Hampshire Association of Senior Centers, AARP, and the Active Retirement Association. So a big thank you to our sponsors. Next slide, please. We are very grateful this year, and one of the silver linings, if you will, of transitioning to having a virtual health fair this year is that we've been able to have a statewide presence. And that is largely due to our outreach partners. Our outreach partners have been working in their communities to help people engage and participate in Age of Champions. So we want to acknowledge each of them. This year's outreach partners include American House, Easter Seals, Conway Public Library, Tamworth Cook Memorial Library, and Portsmouth Senior Center. So again, thank you to our outreach partners. Next slide, please. So for those of you who participated in other sessions, you know that this year's Age of Champions is celebrating wellness through the model of the 5 holistic wellness domains that you can see on your screen right now. We've been featuring one of the 5 domains each and every day this week. And today's domain is emotional wellness. Next slide, please. The emotional domain emphasizes self-awareness, compassion for self and others, mindfulness, optimism, and hopefulness. So this is the feeling dimension of wellness. Each and every day, we've had a vision statement to represent our wellness domains. And I'd like to share with you our vision statement for today. Our vision statement for today is to feel happy and perceive that I am in control of my life. I'm going to say that one more time. To feel happy and perceive that I am in control of my life. We encourage you to keep this vision statement, to hold this vision statement in your mind as you participate today. So now I'm very pleased to turn it over to our presenters for our first session. I'd like to welcome Bev Packard and Tina Goulet, who will be teaching us powerful tools for caregivers and sharing practical tools for self-care. So thank you, Tina and Bev.
Good morning, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. We will be discussing, my name is Tina Goulet, and I'm here with Bev Packard, and we'll be discussing an array of caregiver supports, and we are hopeful that you will find this helpful.
Hi there, and I'm Beverly Packard, and I am a certified class leader for Powerful Tools and also a class leader trainer. And welcome. Happy to be here.
The National Family Caregiver Program was initially established in 2000 under the Older Americans Act. It was the first of its kind in that it provides grants to states for the sole purpose of providing supports and services for family caregivers. Under this program, the states are to provide these 5 types of services, and we will be touching upon information and caregiver training, respite and supplemental in particular. Those will be our focus areas today. And these services would work in conjunction with some community-based informal supports. So in New Hampshire, the Family Caregiver Support Program is actually made up of two programs, and they come with 2 different funding streams. We have Title IIIe, which is the federal piece that from the Older Americans Act, and these funds can be used for respite or supplemental. And we also have the Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, and that is respite only, and that is mainly state funded. So I just want to talk about some eligibility. So for Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, ADRD, the caregiver must always be 18 because we're only working with adult caregivers. We are not trying to condone minor children being caregivers for others. So they must be caring for someone who has a dementia diagnosis or some type of dementia, and they must be living under the same roof. For Title IIIe, this is the federal piece, there's a possibility of 3 categories, one of 3 categories that someone may qualify for. You have where the care recipient is at least 60 years of age or older and requires assistance with at least 2 ADLs, a grandparent or relative caregiver who is 55 years of age or older caring for a minor child. And then the third category, which is used very little because it's, I think, even more challenging, is a grandparent, relative caregiver, or possibly even a parent who is 55 years or older caring for an adult child who has a disability. So I just want to further explain a little bit about the Alzheimer's disease and related disorders. So you have an informal caregiver who's an adult, at least 18 years of age and older. The caregiver must be providing day-to-day continuous care for someone with a cognitive impairment, essentially dementia. And this results in the care recipient not being able to follow through after queuing. And that, like I said earlier, the caregiver and the care recipient must live under the same roof. That's how the rules are designed. For Title IIIe, this is the first of the 3 categories. We have where the care recipient must be at least 60 years of age and older, and the care recipient must require assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living. And this is just a short list of some examples of activities of daily living. Then the other 2 categories are either a grandparent who is 55 years of age or older caring for a child. And this child must be they must be the primary caregiver for this child. The child is eligible, the caregiver is eligible up until the child is 18. The day of the 18th birthday, they would no longer be eligible for any respite. And then the final category is if you have a grandparent, relative caregiver, they have to be 55 years of age or older and providing for an adult, either adult grandchild, child, and they have a disability. So here are some examples of how respite funds can be used. The important piece to remember is that it needs to be used for respite. It is not meant for the caregiver to go to work, unfortunately. It needs to be used to provide the caregiver a break from caregiving. Because caregiving can be frustrating, challenging, lonely, and overwhelming, it's important that caregivers get a break now and then to take care of themselves and their own needs. A change of scenery, a change of activities can really prevent burnout and emotional or physical exhaustion. Planned occasional breaks can really help the caregiver step out of their role as a caregiver for a while, relax, do something for themselves, and then return to the situation with renewed energy. And here are some examples of how a grandparent or relative caregiver may use respite. They can potentially have someone hired by a fiscal agency. The fiscal agency would just have to do some intake paperwork and they would hire them as an employee. Under the program directed by the federal guidelines, Title IIIe, there's a possibility of supplemental funds. Supplemental services are goods or services other than respite that would help the caregiver provide continued care. It's meant to complement the care the caregiver is currently providing. Some examples are listed here. The most common ones are probably incontinence supplies, nutritional supplements such as Ensure, personal emergency response system. Those are probably some of the more common ones. And there's also possibly building a ramp or the cost of a ramp, shower rails. We do need to make sure that the requested item would not be covered by another entity like Medicare or Medicaid. There is a maximum of $1,000 for supplemental. So this is just some highlights of some of the things I briefly went over. Mainly the Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, there's a $1,500 maximum for respite. There's no supplemental. Under Title IIIe, there's a maximum of $2,000 with a maximum of $1,000 for supplemental. And these can be in conjunction if that works best for the caregiver. And I just want to briefly touch upon that we, under the caregiver program, have been provided some COVID funds under the CARES Act. And right now I'm trying to make sure that everything is balanced. So there's been a pause for about a week or so because we can't overspend that. But it will resume next week. And I personally feel that just about everyone has been impacted one way or another by COVID. So most of the people that I have spoken with have qualified for this. And here's just some really a short list of some examples that we've used for CARES Act. The most common has been that the caregiver has requested a check for $750, and they, unfortunate to do that though, they do have to fill out a tax form and it would count towards their income. So some people might be hesitant about that, and we can't provide any tax education. So we don't know what the tax implications, but we just make sure that they're aware. So, and with that, a lot of the people have been maybe purchasing food because the person is home more, the person they're caring for, whether it's a child or the older adult, or something to help out with where this respite wasn't possible. Here are some examples for grandparents. Food was a really big expense that grandparents and relative caregivers have been experienced during the pandemic. And they have been, it's been the easiest, I think, for some grandparents to just receive a check for $750. And there's also increased household bills. I think, electricity may go up, heat, the cost of heat, because the child had previously been in school full time. So just a quick overview about the process. You would, if someone's interested or may want to see if they qualify for the caregiver program in New Hampshire, they would just contact ServiceLink. And then they would get connected to the caregiver specialist of that office. And then they would set up a time to do an assessment. At this time, all the assessments are conducted over the phone. But prior to the pandemic, they were always in person. So here's a list of the ServiceLink sites across New Hampshire. And now I will turn it over to Bev as she can talk further about another piece of caregiver support.
Right, thank you. So today I'm going to talk about powerful tools, give a brief overview, and really concentrate on stress. So welcome to Managing Stress. Today's presentation is based upon the Powerful Tools for Caregivers program. And what this is, it's a self-care educational program for caregivers it's been disseminated in 41 states across the United States. Since the program's inception, a great deal of research, evaluation, and revision has been done to ensure the program's continued value and its success. The 6-week Powerful Tools for Caregivers class has been shown to have a positive impact on caregivers' health for a diverse group of caregivers, including those that are living in the rural area, ethnic minorities, adult children of aging parents, well spouses, partners, ethnic minorities, adult children of aging parents, well spouses, their partners, and caregivers at different stages in their caregiving role. Data from the class participant evaluations indicate that the Powerful Tools for Caregivers class improves the self-care. It helps the caregiver increase in exercise, relaxation techniques, and medical checkups. There's the better management of emotions, reduced guilt, anger, and depression, and a better use of community resources. And the program does use a script, and that's because we want to maintain the integrity of the program and make sure that the family caregivers get the same information no matter where the class is offered. And today we'll be focusing on tools that will help you to manage the daily stresses and those challenges that you face as caregivers. Now, caregiving to someone with a chronic illness requires a different mindset than caring for someone with an acute illness. With an acute illness, such as the flu or a pneumonia or an appendicitis, we often set aside our own lives until the illness passes. But this approach is not effective when our family member has a chronic illness. And that might be a stroke, Parkinson's, or Alzheimer's. So with an acute illness, cures are available. Treatments are available to heal and restore that person's health. With a chronic illness, there are no cures. No treatment will take the illness away. With an acute illness, it's short term. Our lives are changed for a few days. And with a chronic illness, it's long lasting. A chronic illness has ongoing impact, and problems or the challenges don't go away. With an acute illness, there's a somewhat return to normal. And with a chronic illness, normal changes. It's a permanent change from what was. With an acute illness, one is dealing with certainty, and with a chronic illness, uncertainty. A chronic illness can lack a predictable pattern, and the long-term effects may be hard to predict. So as discussed, an acute illness is not the same as a chronic illness. Therefore, using identical caregiving approaches, for example, setting our lives aside for just a few days, well, that is not going to work with a chronic illness. It's not appropriate, and it can be damaging, because being a caregiver for the long haul of a chronic illness requires that we do take care of ourselves. And I suppose many people have been told, you've got to learn to take care of yourself. Well, and you may say to yourself, sure, you tell me how. And with powerful tools, we give you all sorts of ways and techniques and the tools to do just that, to take better care of yourself. Usually we can't stop the impact of a chronic illness. However, we are responsible for our own self-care. You know what? It is critical that we don't become a second victim. It's sad when a person says, you know, my mother was the ill person, but her illness destroyed my father. So it's not selfish to think about your own health and your own well-being as caregivers, because when you take care of yourself, everyone benefits. You know, stress is the reaction we experience when the demands placed on us are just too much to cope with. While some stress can be positive, too much stress can affect us in negative ways, both physically and emotionally. One of the most important things we can do, both for ourselves and for the person we provide care for, is to take care of ourselves. It's important that we thrive, not just survive. So the steps to managing stress is, number one, recognize the warning signs early, because it's easier and more helpful to make changes early to reduce the stress. Identify the sources of stress. We need to ask ourselves, okay, what is causing stress for me? And because what causes the most stress for each of us may be quite different. Identify what you can and what you cannot change, and then take action. So don't ignore it, address it. Taking these 4 steps to reduce stress is critical to self-care. Both the caregiver and the care receiver benefit. We're more likely to be patient and loving when we're taking good care of ourselves. So now we're going to identify our signs and sources of stress. Each one of us has warning signs that tell us that we're experiencing stress. If we identify and respond to our early warning signs, we can prevent the destructive impact of stress. Too often, however, we don't recognize the early warning signs or we ignore them. So as we look at what is stressful in giving and receiving care, you know, it can be quite different for each of us. So I'd like now for us to think about what your warning signs are. So if you want to shout out, you can unmute and let us know what your warning signs are, and then what your sources of stress are. For me, I find that I become kind of paralyzed. That's my warning sign, when I just can't think of what to do. And the source of that is that it's crunch time. I just have way too much to do. So that's my source of stress. So folks out there, what are some of your warning signs, and then what are your sources of stress? I get grumpy. Bridget says, I get grumpy. And Bridget, what is the source of that grumpiness?
Well, you know, it varies. Sometimes most of the time I find myself getting grumpy when there's something going on, and there's not a plan for it. Like there's outcomes up in the air, and I don't know what to do.
Right. And Marguerite says, I shut down.
Yeah, when I don't have control.
I get shut down and feel sad. Yes. And how come? I mean, what's the source of that?
I think I just get overwhelmed, and I feel like I don't have control over all the things I have going on, and it takes me time to recognize that. And so usually I shut down, I feel sad, and then I notice it and I say to myself, what's going on here?
Right. Thank you, Jen. Jen says eating out. So Jen, what's the source? I don't need a source for that. That would be great.
Yeah, I think that it is a reminder for me, though, when I find that 3 times a day I have gone and gotten fast food from somewhere. That's really more what I mean by eating out. And I think it's because I start to get overwhelmed, and
Right.
I can't think clearly, so at least it's a trigger when my car is full of fast food containers. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? It's like a visual, I like about being a visual person. So
yeah, you gotta love it, right, Jen? Thanks. Anxiety. I'm sorry, and I missed the person who brought that up, but feeling anxious. What's the source of the anxiety?
For me, it's everything. I'm a pretty anxious person anyway, but I generally can manage that anxiety. But it's kind of like what everyone else is saying, when things just happen all at once. You know, you all of a sudden have 10 meetings in 1 week, and doctor's appointments and stuff with family. And it's like, how did it all of a sudden bunch up? It was going so well. And Jen, you are not alone. I just removed quite a bit of fast food from my car. So I don't know if I should say you're in good company, but you have company.
well, I think you're good company, Kristen. Thanks for saying.
Right. So yeah, forgetfulness, being irritable, maybe crying a lot are some, warning signs. Oh, a headache and that tenseness in your shoulders. Some people say the sources might be, well, you just can't say no. Or for the caregivers, there's just a lack of help from the siblings. So common. And for a person that is caring for a person with dementia or Alzheimer's, it's like constantly hearing, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. So those are some of the warning signs and some of the sources of stress. Thank you. So remember, that the earlier that we identify our warning signs, the better. Because the results of neglecting stress could be increased health problems. Stress affects the immune system, and it increases our vulnerability, to illness, and it can worsen existing medical problems. It's disrupted relationships, and stress can cause a breakdown in communication with others. There's the burnout. This is the total physical and emotional exhaustion. Depression, which can range all the way from just feeling down to really feeling hopeless. And that leads to a decreased quality of care. So stress is a fact of caregiving. We can't eliminate it. We can't stop it from occurring, but we can manage stress. So we've completed the first 2 steps in managing stress, identifying the warning signs and identifying the sources of stress. Now, the third important step in managing stress is to clearly identify what you can change and what you cannot change. We only increase our stress and frustration if we try to change things over which we have no control. Have you ever said, oh, if only he would change? So it's important to remember we can only change ourselves. We can't change another person. Sometimes this means we need to let go. So some of the barriers to taking stress. You can't think of what to do. You may choose an activity that's way too difficult, or postponing stress reduction. For example, if you planned to get away because you know that you need some respite time, you plan a day at the beach for 3 months from now. Well, this is a positive step, but if you need a break now, waiting 3 months may be way too long. So now let's think about some of the stress reducers. These would be activities that help us to relax, are soothing and pleasurable, make us feel good, and what we can build into our life on a regular basis. So a stress reducer doesn't have to be elaborate. Just a few minutes a day doing something relaxing and enjoyable can help us deal better with stress. So now let's think about what are some of the ways that you reduce stress. I know for me, it's some physical activity, doing some walking, or just some sort of exercise helps me to reduce my stress. I'd like to hear from some of the others. What are some of the stress reducers that you do? Marguerite is exercising, taking a walk, reading a book. Oh, and playing with my puppy. Yep, pet therapy, it's great.
Looks like Gail had her hand up.
Okay. Hi, Gail. You need to unmute. Yep.
I did. Okay. I do some deeper muscle relaxation exercises, and that seems to work for me better than meditation, because I can't seem to get my mind to stop trying to focus on one thing. So if I'm actually doing contractions of my deep muscles in a progressive manner, it relaxes me physically, and then emotionally, or mentally, I tend to quiet down. And if I do it on a regular basis, it's almost like you can bring the relaxation response up in much less time than going through the whole process. But sometimes I don't do that very well to do it that often. I just do it when I need it, and then it's harder, much harder.
Yeah. When it's nice and warm outside, sitting in the sun.
Mm.
Yeah, we all could use that for sure.
Uh,
Taking a drive,
mhm.
music, playing with the kids. Thanks, Jen. So yeah, these are all good examples. Going for maybe for some people, gardening,
Mm.
cooking, baking. Of course, for some people, that might be a increased stress if you're baking. So that's what we're saying, that you know, the stress reducers are certainly different, or can be different for everybody. So there are definitely a lot of ways to reduce stress, but what's important is to finding ways that work for you. And another tool that can work for folks is to create an action plan. An action plan is an agreement or a contract with yourself to do something that you want to do. Today, we're going to make an action plan for something that will help you to reduce the stress. Now we'll go over the parts of an action plan. An action plan is something that you want to do. It's not something that you think you should do, but it is something that you want to do. An action plan needs to be reachable. It's something that you can easily complete during the next week because we want you to succeed. It needs to be behavior specific. The more specific you can be about what you will do, the better. For example, taking better care of myself is not a specific behavior, but making an appointment for a physical checkup, walking 3 times a week, or asking someone to stay with your care receiver for 1 morning are all specific behaviors. And then it needs to answer these questions. What? What are you going to do? For example, I will read Moby Dick for pleasure, or I will walk. And then it needs to answer the question, how much are you going to do it? I will read 1 chapter, or I will walk for 2 blocks. And then when are you going to do it? I'm going to read first thing in the morning before I get out of bed, or I will walk in mid-afternoon when mother is napping. How often are you going to do this? For example, I will read 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I think you can see that it's better to commit to doing something 2 or 3 times a week and exceed your action plan than to commit to doing something every day and fail because you didn't do it. And then you want to rate your confidence level. This is how confident or certain you are that you will accomplish your entire action plan during the next week. You want to rate your confidence level on a scale from 0 to 10. 0 means you're not at all confident that you'll be able to accomplish your goal. And so why bother to write it down? All the way up to a 10, where you're very confident that you will accomplish your goal. So remember, action plans are there to help you thrive while caregiving. So I've developed an action plan for myself. And as you can see on the slide, this is my action plan. So if you folks would go ahead and think of something that you want to do during the next week. You can grab yourself a piece of paper and pencil and write it in. This week I will. Now for me, this week, I will practice my yoga. How much am I going to do it? For 30 minutes. When I am going to practice yoga on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And I'm going to be doing it 3 times. And my confidence level is a 9. So let's take a few minutes and go ahead and have you write your own action plans out, and then we can share them with each other. So go ahead, think about it. What is it that you want to do? Something you want to do. Maybe something that you've done in the past, something that you're doing now, or something that you hope to do in the future. Okay. Would anyone like to let us know what you'll be doing in the coming week? Hi, Tina.
Hi, I thought this week I will walk for 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week in the afternoon, and my confidence level is probably an 8.
Okay. Let's hope the weather holds.
Yes.
Anyone else?
This is Gail.
Hi,
I-
Gail.
Hi, I read sporadically during the week, and I'm part of a book club. So you have to finish at a certain time in the month. So I think I said I will read 1 to 3 chapters 3 times a week, on a steady schedule, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And my confidence level, I believe, would be an 8 with that.
Thank you. Okay, good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
So for me, I've been working on steps. So not so much like committing to walking outside, because I know how the weather is up here in northern New Hampshire. And I know how I am for motivation, which is not much. So I have a very sedentary job, sit at least 8 to 10 hours a day. So my goal is pretty small. It's only about 3,300 steps, but I like to try to reach that 5 days a week. So it doesn't really matter which 5 days, as long as I've got little, 5 check marks on my watch, I'm pretty happy. So my confidence is like a 6. I'm getting there. I've had a couple of good weeks. And then over time, I've built up like my steps. So my goal is to, someday make it to like 8 to 10,000 a day.
Okay, good.
Little progress, but getting there.
All right. And it's something that you want to do. It's not something that you have to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I have to do it, but I want to do it. It just depends on the day.
Right. Thanks. And this is from, yes. So, well, now you have a little bit of a snippet of what the action plan is like. And during the Powerful Tools class, that's when each week the participants will create an action plan. And it does become really fun. And it's neat for the participants to come back and report out exactly what they've done. So based on today's presentation, we hope you remember these 4 items. It's critical to take care of yourself. It's important to identify warning signs and sources of stress. It's important to take action to relieve your stress, and action plans are a tool to help you reduce stress. So now we'll turn it back over to Tina, and she's going to talk a little bit about the community resources.
Thank you, Bev. And that was really great. I really enjoyed that myself. So thank you so much. So I just wanted to bring your attention to other resources. I focused initially on a program through ServiceLink that's funded through federal and state funds. But I just want you to make sure you're aware of some other resources, and there are many, many more resources. So we have the Alzheimer Association, and that is one of the leading voluntary health organizations regarding Alzheimer's care with support, education, and research. And they have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline. Grandstand Independent Living is a advocacy group, provides information to individuals and families whose mission is to promote quality of life and independence for people with disabilities through advocacy, information, education, support, and transition. The Brain Injury Association offers services and supports, as well as a downloadable directory of resources for a variety of brain injuries. ECCLs offers a variety of programs and resources to provide support and care for caregivers. Some of the services include autism services, medical rehabilitation, senior services, adult day, community-based services, transportation, and veteran services. Waypoint is a private nonprofit whose services include healthcare for older Americans and adults with disabilities, services for children with developmental concerns or chronic health conditions, some childcare, early childhood and family support, including a resource for grandparents, and some mental health counseling. And I just want to make sure that we think about some other that may not seem like a direct support, but community action programs. They can provide some counseling, some help in paying for bills, fuel assistance, utilities, weatherization programs, and sometimes rental assistance. The National Alliance for Caregiving is a resource that offers caregiving tips and guides. They give updates about legislation. They have publications and reports on important caregiving issues. And then the Community Action Network is an organization that works to help people from caregivers ranging from parents of children with special needs to families and friends of wounded soldiers, from a young couple who may be dealing with a new diagnosis of MS, to adult children caring for parents with Alzheimer's disease. And these resources are for caregivers across the country free of charge. So that just about wraps up our presentation. I don't know if there's any questions about things we talked about. Beverly did a small snippet of Powerful Tools for Caregivers, which is one service that can be provided. You can contact ServiceLink to learn more about. And here is our contact information.
Great. So we do have a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Tina or Bev, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
I had a question regarding the Title 3E. And I wanted to find out if people are eligible for this, even if they're eligible for CFI.
That is a great question. And for the Title 3E respite or supplemental, it's when the person is providing the main support or the only support. So technically they would not be, the caregiver would not be eligible if they're caring for someone who's receiving CFI services.
Okay, even if they are the service provider themselves, if the family is getting paid to provide those services?
Yes, because it's meant for, there's a couple reasons. One is it's meant for informal caregivers, so those that aren't being paid for, and then it's to give them a break. So they may have chosen to provide, to be paid as the caregiver or as the provider. So they can change that option as well, and then that would give them the break. And under CFI, there is some respite options also.
Right.
So
Okay.
that is.
I was thinking more of like services like this, like you had mentioned, like the snow plowing or something. Those services are not covered under CFI, you know, and
Yes.
caregivers struggle with that. So
Yes, that
okay,
is.
thank you.
Thank you.
One of the questions was to how we can one can access the action plan. So you can call any of your service links, and the person that is a class leader can get that to you. So if you just call the, you know, Monadnock ServiceLink, Grafton County, whatever, they can get that for you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Bev or for Tina? All right, so hearing none, just want to say thank you to Bev and to Tina for an awesome opening session today. We have a lot of great content for you throughout the rest of the day as well. Our next session starts at 1 p.m. and is titled Creative Connections Through Movement, and it's being put on by Danielle Fitzpatrick from MoCo Arts. We will be posting the Zoom link for this session in Cadence as well as in the chat here shortly. This session will be followed by our 2 o'clock, where Rebecca Skye will be presenting on the New Hampshire State Commission on Aging. In the meantime, please be sure to check out our resource roundup materials as well as our virtual resource fair. And you can find links to both of these in the community board on Cadence. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy.
Sam, I'm sorry, thank you. There was a message that got sent just to me, I just realized, and not to the whole group, from Linda. So if I could take 1 second just to read that, or Linda, if you want to come off mute. Is Linda still on? I don't see her. She wrote, it's important for caregivers to always have a backup plan for emergencies for themselves. It could be physical needs, acute illness, or mental health. Can't take one more day. Since adult day programs have been stopped for COVID, this has accelerated the need for making sure this is in place. So just realized that had not gone to the group. So I wanted to share that important, that comment from Linda.
Great, thank you, Laura. So unless anybody has anything else, I want to say thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the day's sessions.